Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome back to another StarCraft video. Now what I got for you today is a best of 5 series of very high level SC2 played with the new balance changes on the new ladder map pool. Spawning here in the top right hand corner of Stasis LE and playing with the blue Zerg drones. He is a veteran of SC2 and he goes by the name of Nerchio. And his opponent spawning in the top left-hand corner. He's playing with the red Protoss probes. I am honestly not all too familiar with this man just yet, but I've heard great things. I've seen a couple games of him so far, and he likes to play very aggressive. He's 16 years old, he's from Croatia, and he goes by the name of Goblin. Now, I did mention, right, that he likes to play very aggressive. Already, a forge is coming up, and we do see a probe making its way towards the other side of the map. Now, I say that, and Nerchio apparently... Oh, Goblin's gonna check. Nerchio apparently decides to immediately plot down a hatchery inside of his opponent's main base. At the exact same time, Goblin has already set up a pylon outside of the main base of his opponent, and I think he may very well be planning to build some photon cannons on the other side of the map. Okay, so this is gonna be a crazy game. This is the first match of a series. This is gonna be crazy. So, we see a photon cannon rush, followed up right here with a gateway, so likely then immortals and whatnot as well a little while later. Going up against a proxy hatchery inside of the main base. Now, already though, there's a photon cannon available inside of the main base of the Protoss that will eventually shut down the hatchery. Now, the question is Nerchio gonna let this one finish? He could very well let it finish and then get like a queen out and maybe put some creep down and maybe a couple Zerglings to be a nuisance. But I do have a feeling that this eventually should be shut down. Now, Nerchio did sneak out another drone right here as well. It's made its way toward the gold base. Now, apparently the hatchery, by the way, will be cancelled, so some players do opt to let it finish. Instead, we see the Roach Warren coming up right here for Nerchio, and I think he may very well be opting to go for... apparently another hatchery. I saw him saving up resources there. Apparently another hatchery. Now this one is in range right here of that assimilator. I don't think Nerchio is aware of that. It will be in range there, so Goblin knows exactly what is going on. But so far, he isn't really responding to it just yet. Cybernetic score here is coming up. There's a couple probes already mining some gas here too, so this does indicate that it is very likely going to be some of that immortal shenanigans here as well. This is something that we saw, of course, Has do very regularly. But is it a way that Goblin loves to play? There we go. Robo facility coming up. Another shieldy boy will be set up here as well, or 2 of them in total. And, well, I mean, I'm starting to get a little bit worried though. I mean, there's no response just yet here from Goblin to the hatchery inside of his main base. By the way, one probe there did end up finding the drone that was trying to take the gold. So Goblin is aware of the fact that there are likely some minerals being spent somewhere. I'm assuming he knows about the fact that this hatchery is here, right? Otherwise, he likely, I mean, he must know, right? If you find this drone, you also must find a hatchery that's in plain sight. But I'm a little bit surprised that he hasn't really responded to it just yet. This does mean that Nerchio can build a couple roaches here. Maybe it's not that much of a threat either way, because Goblin will be able to slowly but surely start dealing the damage here inside of his opponent's main base. Look at these shield batteries pushing forward. Now, there are a couple Ravagers available. Obviously, committing to building a couple roaches on the other side of the map is a little bit risky. They will be produced here. There's a single shield battery available too, so maybe Goblin plans on running some of the probes towards the safety of that shield battery. But regardless, the real threat is right here inside of the main base of the Zerg. A couple of these stalkers will be mass recalled, so that's the reason why we didn't really see much of a response just yet. Goblin will likely be able to just simply finish these roaches that way, and now that an immortal is taking the place of these 2 stalkers, I think that Goblin must be feeling pretty good about himself. Because as long as this immortal is close to the shield batteries, right, he's gonna be in a really good spot. Now, Nerchio is landing some really solid corrosive balls as well. Look at these shield batteries from the ground. They are manually targeted to heal up the shield batteries on the high ground. So the ones on the low ground are healing the ones on the high ground. Well, it doesn't matter anymore because there's more than enough corrosive balls available at this point as well. But this is where the scary stuff happens. While the stalkers are going to town here on that in-base hatchery, a War Prism is available here too. As soon as that second Immortal comes out, the juggling can begin. And it all comes down to the micro capabilities right here of the Protoss player. If his micro is good, he can get a lot of damage done. If he messes up somewhere, ooh, and that's a nice little mess up right there, right, for the Zerg. If he messes up somewhere, and he loses one of those Immortals, for example, for free, he's gonna be in a lot of trouble, the Protoss that is. However, Zerg, right now, is kind of with his back up against the wall. It doesn't look like a very menacing Protoss army, right? And in the meantime, there are still some units here dealing a little bit of damage as well. I love this response, by the way, from Goblin. Really not overreacting here in the slightest. He obviously knew about that hatchery being up, but he did not even really respond to it until the hatchery was close to finishing. The corrosive biles are good, but I've seen Zerg players in this position 1,000 times before, since Protoss is still looking healthy here inside of his own main base, and he's not really mis-microing these Immortals at any point. I've seen this happen a dozen times before. Well, I mean, probably like 5 dozen times at this point. Usually, Zerg eventually is just simply gonna have to deal with too many Immortals that they cannot kill. The shield batteries are providing so much value. Another Immortal right now is being produced. Now, the biles are really, really solid. But Nerchio hasn't really done any kind of damage here with this hatchery inside of the main base whatsoever. Can we have a quick look like there? Yeah, okay, so only a single probe there ended up going down. That's a lot of shield batteries as well. But right now, Protoss can start getting a lot of value, right? This is the moment where Protoss can start getting a lot of value out of those units. He's been microing properly so far. As long as he doesn't mess it up, he's gonna be in an excellent position. A third Immortal right now joins in here as well. And right now, you can see the amount of... Oh, man. Oh, actually, one Immortal there does fall. But the amount of Immortals available here for just a second was enough to almost start one-shotting some of these weakened Ravagers. Still, I mean, obviously the reason why he slipped up in micro there is because he's also microing on the other side of the map. But still, it is good enough here, I think. Eventually, the main base, though, from both of these players will run out. And that's actually where the game could become really interesting. Nerchio is getting a lot of value out of these Ravagers. Goblin hasn't really been able to break his opponent just yet. There's a single Ravagers now also here available, so I guess Nerchio plans on harassing some on the other side of the map. The heal over time, though, by these screens, right? That's one of the changes to the transfuse, of course, with the new balance patch. Ooh, great last snatch right there. Getting that Stalker just barely out of trouble. But slowly but surely, right, it looks like a lot of the defenses here for Zerg are falling. Zerglings, though, are finally getting some value here. Nerchio is picking up a lot of worker kills. That Ravager, combined with a couple links, managed to deal a lot of damage. The Immortals are also starting to take some hurt here, too. Nerchio is still pushing the opponent back here, and I gotta say, initially this hatchery inside of the main of the Protoss did nothing, but right now, it's starting to deal the hurt. Still, though, that's 3 Immortals. That's 3 Immortals. I know, I'm looking at this and I'm still not all too happy here for the Zerg. He's dealing solid damage. Well, actually, hold that thought. The Roaches are still going to town. Stalkers being on idle there for just a little while. Still 4 Immortals. How are you gonna deal with 4 Immortals? That's the one thing I'm very curious about. How are you ever gonna deal with 4 Immortals? Nerchio is trying to target fire the weakened ones down, but that shield battery on the low ground, right? It is just so much damage. All of the drones are being pulled, and even though Nerchio did try his very hardest, it is the 16-year-old Protoss who wins game number 1. So, I remember on one of my very first balance update videos I made, some of you commented, "Hey Lowko, does this mean that the super aggressive Haas-like playstyle is no longer viable?" Well, apparently it sure is. I mean, this is the very first time I've seen it myself as well. But regardless, here we are on Port Alexander, another one of the new maps. It's got little boxes right here as high grounds. They're scattered all over the map. Can you help me find a cannon rush spot, Arthur? Goblin throwing a little bit of shade right here to Nerchio, whose first name, of course, is Arthur. One of his nicknames is King Arthur, but is he just gonna do it again? Oh man, there we go. The forge is coming down. I think Goblin is once again gonna go for it. Now, Nerchio did give him the XD, and actually there's already a drone out here too. He did give him the XD, so I can imagine he's probably not all too happy about this. The thing about Nerchio is that he's very, very good when you get him to like the early to mid to late game. right? If he manages to play a normal standard game, he's really, really solid. However, when you start throwing weird stuff at him, sometimes he crumbles under the pressure. Now, I honestly was really impressed with the way that he was dealing with the shenanigans in the very first game. Apparently, Nerchio wasn't all too happy with it, and he is just simply gonna try again. It's not like he was satisfied with the result. It's not like he apparently saw that it wasn't working at all. He's just gonna try and do so once again. Now, Goblin at the same time is putting up a pylon right here on the other side of the map. And I'm assuming he's just gonna cannon rush once again. Is that what he's gonna do? There we go. There we go. Photon cannon will be produced here. This is almost like a mirror to the previous game, right? How exactly is this gonna play out? How exactly is this gonna be any different than game number 1? I felt like the reason why game number 1, though, eventually there did go almost in favor of Nerchio was mostly just due to miscontrol from Goblin, right? Not so much the other way around. So I feel like the amount of damage that Nerchio did in the first game was probably the most he was gonna get in the first place. And I felt like if Nerchio, or if Goblin defended just a little bit, Nerchio probably would have, or a little bit better rather, I don't think Nerchio would have been able to really deal that much damage here at all. Roachborn is coming down. The hatchery, by the way, did finish. So that is a major difference, actually. This time around, the hatchery did finish. A set of lynx is already coming up, and also that queen. I think Nerchio is now going to start saving up some of that larva to maybe get like 3 roaches out right when the roach warren spawns. There's that robotics facility now also being produced here by Goblin. The queen is out. This is going to be very interesting very, very quickly. Couple links available, but there we go. Look at that timing. Did you see that? Right when the 3rd larva spawned, Nerchio managed to get himself the 3 roaches started as well. And right now, I'm looking inside of the main base here of Goblin. I have no idea how he's ever going to deal with this. There's a queen available right now too. The queen is obviously not just going to be able to provide that creep spread, but also obviously a ton of damage. Queens are not to be taken lightly whatsoever. There we go. Creep spread will be coming down, and I think that's pretty much it, right? I mean, sure, you can start... I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm a little preemptive here, but sure, you can start building some immortals. But already, I mean, if you're losing your main base, how are you ever going to get enough economy to get enough immortals out here as well? Nerchio immediately jumping into the proxy hatchery will force a Goblin out of the game. So what Nerchio did not manage to do in game number 1 did work here in game 2. Well played. Alrighty, game number 3 in this very quick best of 5 series so far will bring us to Kairos Junction LE. Do you think they're gonna cheese again? I mean, I'm all for it right now. We've been seeing cheese versus cheese versus cheese versus cheese so far. I would not mind seeing a full series like this. I mean, I always kind of feel like Nerchio's real strength is just playing that standard game, but I mean, if your Protoss opponent is gonna force you to play unorthodox, I guess you will be able to force Nerchio in that direction as well, and so far, he does look pretty good. I was a little hesitant of seeing that proxy hatchery there in the second game once again, but Nerchio turns out to be right in that regard. Is he gonna go for, I almost thought he was gonna go for a hatchery first. Okay, he's gonna go for a hatchery first, but he's gonna build it over at the 3rd. So this is one of the counters that we saw Serral do versus Haas in the grand finals at, I think, DreamHack Valencia? Oh, he's just juking his opponent. So this time around, by the way, it's just a gateway here on the low ground. But basically, Haas, a very, very cheesy Protoss player who really started playing this Immortal Juggle a lot. He managed to make his way to the grand finals, and the way that Serral countered the build was just by simply going for the 3rd base as his first hatchery. And it seemed a little bit strange initially. I actually think it was Nerchio in the round of 4 or something that did that for the very first time. I'm not actually entirely sure, don't quote me on that, but regardless, basically by taking the 3rd base first versus a cannon rushing Protoss, you have to force them to make the decision to go after your expansion or after your main, rather than both at the same time. And it's a really clever response that not a lot of people thought of, I don't think, but it's really clever to force a cheesing Protoss to make a choice like that, rather than being able to get everything they bargained for. Now, obviously, taking the 3rd base as your first base is a little bit cheeky as well. You don't necessarily want to do that every single match, because it does make the macro a little bit more difficult, but at this level of play, obviously, the players don't really miss macro depending on where their hatchery is, but ideally, you still build it in the most accessible location. Alrighty, so here we go. Double gateway opener from Goblin. That is something that is still very uncommon these days. He did take himself the double gas here too, so I'm assuming he will maybe follow this up with a Nexus on the low ground eventually, but it does look like he's gonna go for additional gateway units. Is he gonna make 2 more? There we go. 2 more adepts will be produced here too. And I'm assuming maybe a little bit of tech here as well. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so this is once again gonna be a bit of a strange game. It looked like a normal opener there initially, it's not. He may go for a Nexus here eventually, but it is much later than normal. But obviously, Nerchio is fully aware of this at this point in time. Here we go. The Adepts made their way across the map already. Zerglings are now headed to the main. Let's see if he's going to commit. There we go. He will. Still, though, that's a heavy amount of Zerglings, and I think that Nerchio should be able to ward this away for now. Nice little bit of juking on these Adepts, too, but the Adepts came here to kill a couple drones. So far, they've done absolutely none of that. 2 more Adepts, though, are coming up, and while we're talking about that, Goblin snuck out a probe right under our nose, and he planted down a gateway very close towards where the 3rd base of the Zerg is likely gonna go. And there it is. Nerchio completely unaware of this. Oh, Goblin actually got a Dark Shrine coming up. Man, this guy's playing aggressive. This guy loves to play aggressive. I wasn't too familiar with him just yet. I mean, I saw a couple games, I believe at like the Take TV Penthouse Party or something along those lines. I've seen some online games as well. And I know he likes to play like this, but this is very, very aggressive. So Nerchio is looking around. I don't know if he really wanted to take that 3rd base. He may very well shoot himself in the foot by taking that 3rd base right now before his opponent even took a natural. A couple of Adepts are going to eventually commit right here to that mineral line, and that's actually a really big deal. Couple drones there will be picked off. It doesn't sound very significant, but every single worker counts right now. So the Dark Shrine is gonna finish. We do see additional gateways coming up. I'm assuming... Oh, this is still unspotted. I'm assuming that Zergling may have sniffed it out, but that is not the case. Nerchio does not know about this aggression. Charge will be finishing up here in about a half minute or so from now. There's a couple of these Dark Templar coming up too. Eventually the Lynx do find out about this location, but the Dark Templar are already headed inside of the main base. And while there is a single one of those Spore Crawlers set up in the natural, there is nothing available to defend against this inside of the main base. And these Dark Templar are gonna slice and dice up some of those drones. Overseer rather will be morphed in here, but that is already a lot of lost mining time. At the same time, a couple of these leftover units are going to town right here on the hatchery at the 3rd base location, and the Dark Templar in the main, rather than going after the hatch, they're trying to pick up the Roachborn. If they get the Roachborn, that might be game over. They barely do not get it there. That heal over time actually of the Queens being quite helpful there in the grand scheme of things. Although I guess Nerchio would have still liked the burst healing a little bit more. But still, this is not over just yet. Nerchio's actually squeezing out drones. I mean, he kind of needs to because he lost a whole lot of them right there as well. He kind of does need a couple of them, but that's extremely risky. When you know your opponent is likely going to be playing aggressive, you need to be extremely careful with the amount of workers that you are creating. Nerchio hitting a bit of a supply block right here as well, unorthodoxly. Or, yeah, he's going to be able to get himself a couple of those units out as well. He needs to start producing some roaches. Okay, he does right at this point. Lynx at the same time are going for the counterattack. Is there a hole in this wall? Nope, on this map apparently there's no hole in the wall over there, but regardless, I don't think one Adept is gonna shoo away that many Zerglings. If Zerg wants to commit here, he's gonna be fine. I think Nerchio is just mostly giving up the 3rd right at this point, which is fair enough. Eventually, these Lynx are gonna be able to break through, but while that's going on, the Roaches and the Queens are gonna be the final line of defense here for the Zerg player in blue. Archons here available as well. Great micro there, actually. Great hold position micro on these drones, preventing the Zealots from charging forward. And Nerchio, while breaking the front door of his opposing player's natural, is the one who obtains the victory here in game number 3. Hey, you know what? I probably should have looked this up before starting this commentary and assuming it was a best of 5 series. I was just thinking about it for a second. There are 4 new ladder maps that are introduced with the new ladder season, and it turns out that all of these games that I've been casting so far are part of a show match series. So I was thinking about it for a second. There's not 5 new maps. I mean, I could be playing one more game just in case it does go to game number 5 on one of the previous maps I suppose, but it turns out that I made a mistake. I mean, I obviously don't watch those games before giving commentary to it. So regardless of who wins here, this is going to be the final match of this series. Now, the fourth and final new map for the new ladder season is Automaton LE, and I actually really like the idea behind this map. Do I have time to talk about that? Yeah. There's a gateway going down. No forts just yet, no proxy hatchery. Okay, looks like we're up for a normal game. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about is these golden minerals. Now, players don't really like it when you do something extreme as a ladder map maker. Like if you all of a sudden have like a day-night cycle and there's like lava coming out of, you know, the sides of the map or whatever in the middle of it. It would not really be appreciated very much by pro gamers. But I think that something like this is really, really cool. So look at the golden minerals. There's some destructible rocks on the back of them. What you can do is nibble away at those with a couple units in the earlier stages of the game and plant down a hatchery over at this site. While you won't have access to the Vespian Geyser, and obviously, by the way, the same is true right here on the other side of the map. While you won't have access to the Vespian Geyser with a hatchery that you plant down over here, you can mine from the gold base really, really early on. And it's a really cool setup. I mean, what? Did he... Of course he did. Of course he did. Goblin scouted that his opponent went for a hatchery first, and he decided to still, you know, hold on for a second and plant down a forge anyway. So a couple of photon cannons are now going up. That's 4 there in total. He's once more cannon rushing the natural of his opponent. Anyways, I just wanted to, you know, I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool. You can take like a third base over here and then a macro hatch over here and then like mine. Anyway. Regardless, 2 of the photon cannons there do get cancelled, so no crescent moon strategy there from Goblin. He's gonna be able to get rid of this hatchery here eventually, but the question is, and I always wonder about this, who's actually gonna come out ahead in these kind of situations, right? Sure, Nerchio did commit 300 minerals for the hatchery as well as the drone, but this is, you know, 400 minerals right here for the structures that Goblin put up, on top of the cost of the forge too. So I always kind of feel like when you just kill a hatchery with 2 photon cannons like that and a pylon and all that, sure, it's annoying, but it's probably the Zerg who gets out ahead, because you got to keep in mind that the cost of the forge and then the pylon and the 2 photons will also delay the nexus a lot. So sure, you delay the Zerg economy, but apparently Nerchio is gonna use this as an opportunity to take 2 more bases a little bit further away to where you would normally see them, and he's gonna take 1 of them right here in the center of the map as part of the golden mineral patches. Very curious. Now, it's critical that Goblin finds out about this. The only thing that is going to be difficult right now for Nerchio, and the reason obviously why a cannon rush like this is still very good, is that his macro is going to be a bit of a mess. His creep spread is going to have to connect all of those bases relatively soon in order to actually defend them. But you can almost sort of treat all of these bases as separate entities right now. You can't really consider them as part of one Zerg hive, I suppose. You have to be very, very careful with how you defend this if you are the Zerg. So unit positioning and whatnot is very, very, very important. Whereas Goblin can just simply sit behind his little wall right here and produce whatever he likes. And speaking of whatever he likes, turns out he likes adepts. There we go. The glaive upgrade is coming up. It's a flat-out attack speed improve for the adepts, so that does mean that he's going to be able to deal quite a bit of damage with them. In particular, against the units that adepts are good against. For example, Zerglings and for example Hydralisk. Adepts are absolutely phenomenal, but they're not very good against roaches. Still, they're very good at moving around as well, right? When I remember when adepts were first introduced, and by the way, did he find? No, he doesn't find out about the gold just yet. But when adepts were first introduced, they were a completely different mechanic than we had ever seen before in StarCraft, and I guess in most RTS games, right? The way the unit moves with that shade, and it teleports to the shade, and you can control the shade, as well as that unit individually as well. It took players a really long time to figure out how to actually properly deal with them, because while on paper, roaches are really good, if the shades just simply go everywhere that the roaches aren't, obviously you're gonna still be able to do a lot of damage. And while on paper you had these unit counters, sometimes it didn't really work out like that. It took like a half year before people really got good at dealing with these adepts. There we go though. Great defense by Nerchio. And he also just now got a perfect scout off inside of the main base of his opponent. And he will find out that it's very likely going to be Adept. Well, I mean, he sees the warp in right here of the Adept, so he must know that at this point it is going to be Glaive. And I think Glaive Adepts are really excellent here. Can they actually hit from over here? I don't think they can shoot through the rocks, right? So I guess it's clever of Nerchio not to... I don't know if they actually can. Maybe if you put an Adept right over here, they can... I don't know. Anyway, it's clever that he keeps these rocks alive. If he destroys the rocks 100%, he's going to be able to hit them. But here we go. The Adepts have now found out about these drones in the center. Apparently, eventually, the Roaches also cleaned up those Photon cannons that were blocking the natural from much earlier on into this game. And right now, this is going to be very scrappy. Excellent control so far by Goblin, though. Not committing or overcommitting to anything. He's simply trying to send a couple of Adepts through the map. And he's trying to get them into positions where they can go to town on those mineral lines. But he obviously doesn't want to sacrifice them. Now, he does commit there. This is a bit of a weird choke. You can't really leave very easily from this area. There's a one spine crawler available there too. Looks like the Adepts inside of the main base of the Zerg will likely also be able to get some damage done. And this is a whole lot of worker kills in a short amount of time. And that's kind of what Adepts are good at, you know. You blink twice, a whole mineral line disappears. 23 drones there in total. And that is all as a result of that natural being cancelled earlier and Nerchio being forced to take bases much further out. And while Nerchio is definitely not out of this game yet, he is in a very tricky position. Now, obviously, Nerchio would probably say, well, if I would have defended perfectly, I would have been very far ahead. And I guess that's true, but it's very difficult to do so. I guess it is just a matter of practice, though. Eventually, he might be able to pull these kind of things off as well, but it's just one misstep that you need against the Adepts. Just one slight hiccup. And all of a sudden, you lose a mineral line worth. I like this as well, though. Goblin is trying to prevent this really quick counterattack with the Roaches. Like, normally what happens if you lose all of the Adepts, like Goblin has been doing so far, the Roaches will go in for the counterattack, and while Nerchio is trying to do so, he's continuously pushed back just because more and more of these Adepts are being a nuisance. So just small groups of Adepts like this buy a lot more time for whatever other unit to come out. And speaking of other units, Goblin is going for 3 of those Stargates, and he's getting himself a whole bunch of Void Rays. Now, Void Rays are very uncommon at this level of play, but they have actually received a little bit of a buff. So remember back in the day when you activated Prismatic Alignment, it would slow down the Void Ray by 40% of its movement speed. Beautiful move here, by the way, by Nerchio, forcing the cancel on that third. But it would slow down the unit's movement speed by 40%. Right now, it's been reduced to 25%, if I'm not mistaken. So Void Rays can now actually sort of chase down units while Prismatic Alignment is activated. And in case you're wondering, Prismatic Alignment is an ability that allows the Void Ray to deal additional damage to armored units. And units like Roaches, of course, are armored. Very interesting, very interesting. Anyway, 42 drones! Oh man, I didn't realize that it was that many. Well, hey, that's rough. That's real rough. So how exactly are you gonna deal with this if you are the Zerg right now? Going Hydras? I'm not sure. Hydra's gotten a bit of a nerf. They have 10% less attack speed. So I like the addition of the Queen right here. Although eventually, though, you're gonna want something that moves off creep as well. Speaking of moving off creep, though, while the base here in the center dies, the Roaches have made their way towards the natural of their opponent, and they're gonna go to town right here on whatever they can find. There's a single one of these... Ooh, well, there's actually a group of them right here, but the sentries are not hitting their second set of force fields, and it does mean that the Nerchio Roaches do flood into the natural. Great move here by Nerchio, and actually Goblin following it up with... So he got himself a whole bunch of Void Rays, which is nice. I guess he must have mass recalled. But he's now switching into Phoenixes, which I kind of like. We haven't really seen that before, but obviously Phoenixes are phenomenal. They're very good at harassing, although I don't think Nerchio was really complaining about his opponent's lack of harassment in this game so far. Regardless, while a couple more Roaches tried to deal some damage there at the third, the ones at the natural were killed, and that was actually 14 workers, all things considered. And apparently Nerchio, he's gonna go for a Nidus network as a follow-up. Man, I love the creativity. I'm already a big fan of the new balance patch. This is so cool. There's so much more variety in builds. It's much cheaper right now to go Nidus Worm, and if you have a bunch of extra leftover queens, right, because you needed to respond to Stargate units, Not only can you bring them to the battle to defend against all of the shenanigans, and you know, you can use them as like a stepping stone before you get a lot of Hydras out, you can bring them to the party on the other side of the map as well when you get yourself that Nidus worm out. I mean, you could always obviously already do that, but right now getting the Nidus network is not as big of an investment as it once was. The worms are much cheaper, and you can use it continuously throughout the map. This is cool, really, really cool. I hope he's gonna bring them to the party. I mean, otherwise I look like a fool. Don't make me look stupid, please. There we go. Alright, alright. Nidus Worm does go down. Keep in mind, it is attackable right now, but Goblin doesn't see it. The queens do go into it, so they are most definitely planning on joining these roaches and hydras for an attack over at the third base location. Now, one hallucinated phoenix will spot exactly where this aggression is coming from, but that is still a scary looking Protoss army though. Good force field so far, getting a lot of value out of them. The more Void Rays come out, the easier this is going to be, but Void Rays are still a bit of a funny unit in this regard. Sometimes they just simply melt, like snow for the sun, but sometimes they can kill literally everything. It all comes down to force fields though. Those force fields have to be good. There we go! Big slice of that Zerg army does get eradicated immediately, and that Protoss army is pushing forward. Sure, Queens may have gotten a bit of a nerf, they're still very powerful, but transfuses alone would not have saved those units. And Goblin, in an extremely clean engagement, shuts down that Zerg aggression, and I guess he should probably get rid of the Nidus Worm as well while he's at it. Couple links, by the way, at the same time, tried to go for a bit of a run-by. But that was still really well played. And actually, they didn't just try to go for a bit of a run-by, I guess they managed to get in. Of course, Lowko, assuming, you know, high-level players are only microing one fight. What are you thinking? While the Protoss army now, though, is moving through the center of the map, the Zerglings are going in for the counterattack, and they once again killed a lot of workers, actually. That's a ton of workers that ended up going down there. Kind of forcing Goblin into a bit of a weird position. There's no... This is weird, right? When is the last time... Ooh, there's another Nidus coming up. But when is the last time you've seen a Protoss player move across the map without a war prison? This is mostly a Stargate-based army. I'm curious to see how this engagement is gonna go. Well, that's the end of that Hydra den, that's for sure. Great force fields once again, shutting down all of those Hydralisks out of the engagement for at least a little while. The Nidus Worm does finish, but I don't think there's really a whole lot that Zerg can do right now. And now that Goblin has the high ground, I mean, we've all seen Star Wars, right? It's over, Nerchio! He's got the high ground! Yeah, this is gonna be very difficult to clean up here. Goblin managed to get a beautiful engagement there, abusing the lack of a natural against the Zerg, and eventually, he is the one who obtains the victory. Now, I secretly hope that Nerchio, you know, would win the fifth or the fourth game, just so it would still be considered a best-of-5 series. I guess this series ends 2-2, but there is no denying that Goblin is one of those names that you do want to remember. I'm excited to see how he's gonna do. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Let me know what your favorite new map is. I mean, we got Stasis LE, Automaton LE, Kairos Junction LE, and Port Alexander. Which one of the 4 maps do you like the most? I'm curious. And by the way, for those of you wondering, because I get this every single time, LE stands for Leather Edition. For now, though, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile. And I'll see you once again in the next one.